Okay, we're recording. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. It definitely feels like longer than 2 weeks. I think the last 2-week break we had went by quick, but this one seems longer.
I'll take it. That's good to me.
I'm not sure what that means, but
I think it means you're kicking ass.
Okay.
That because it's like you're on your own. It should almost feel like I would assume at this point, if you're kind of still in the process of recovering within yourself, so you might find like, well, I guess I'm going to get an update with Robin. What are we going to talk about today?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that way at all?
I do.
That's awesome.
I did write down a few things, but I don't feel like I have a lot of the pressing topics that I've had before. That would go through my mind week after week.
Yeah, or you don't feel that you need to rely on me so much. You might still need to kind of go back and forth with some things, but the reliance on our conversations aren't there. That's why it seems like it's been a while, because you're just not even, you're doing it on your own.
Okay.
So that brings me to what we talked about when we finished, which is I felt like you were ready to implement eating to hunger at this point.
Yes, and I did that, and for about 2 of the days, I hardly ate anything.
Were you surprised?
At the end of the day, yes, I realized, wow, I've hardly eaten anything. Because I don't typically, I usually, it's a certain time I need to eat.
Yeah,
that's just wired in. And then
it's habit.
2 of the days, I couldn't get enough. And it wasn't because I was bingeing. I was just like, I was so hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the time, it was just, okay, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat.
Yeah, a little bit
Without
more.
even realizing, I hadn't eaten, or wow, I've eaten a lot today.
Yeah, okay, so what you're describing is what I commonly see. When people actually do this is when someone has been not eating to hunger, they're eating on timing, they're eating based on schedules, they're eating not based on the body's biology, but more so just like I wake up, I eat breakfast, then at noon we have lunch, and then I'm supposed to have a snack, and this is what my trainer told me to do. And so there's all this mentation around how to eat. And so when they stop and they go into eating to hunger, the overeating that you didn't even know you were doing before kind of created a lag to your inflammation. And what I typically find with clients that have more body fat is it can take days before they're hungry. And what eventually, as that inflammation subsides, is all of a sudden, because when you're larger, you actually have a higher metabolic rate. You're burning more fuel than when you're thinner. Because of the work the body has to do just to move your body against gravity is more, right? So as your inflammation reduces because you're not overeating anymore, your hunger is going to dramatically rise. Again, I see this with clients who are larger. I don't see this with, my anorexics or my bulimics who are thinner and starved. I see this with the binge eaters who tend to be heavier. Right? So what you just described is a sign you're doing it. You're following what I would expect if I was observing what I would predict from someone who you weren't binging or you were just eating, like you said. I used to eat on a schedule, which had nothing to do with your biology. So if you weren't hungry and you were eating breakfast anyways, you just created more inflammation. Did you ever get a chance to read Weight Loss Apocalypse?
No.
That's okay. So I describe in Weight Loss Apocalypse the actual physiology of hunger, very simplified version of it, and the hunger scale, and why your feelings and sensations of hunger are significant in relation to your physiological need for food. Hunger is your conscious signal that the body needs food to stimulate your metabolism. So if you're not hungry, that's a sign your metabolism doesn't need the stimulus. It's functioning just fine for whatever reason, right? So when you're actually hungry, your body biologically needs the stimulus that food provides, right? If you're not hungry, your body doesn't need the stimulus. So if you eat anyways, you're now overproducing the hormones that the body didn't need. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So, did you ever get a chance to watch on my YouTube channel, there's a video of me describing, and to be honest with you, I should address this right here and right now. A lot of people find me because of the eating disorder that they're trying to fix. But a large part of the following that I have comes from the book I wrote, Weight Loss Apocalypse, where I introduced the science of Dr. Simeon's HCG protocol. Those two concepts are radically different. Did you ever notice that when you were searching me out? You didn't follow me very long before you contacted me, but have you ever watched any of those videos, or have you been confused by what is this HCG thing that she's talking about? And isn't she telling us to stop dieting?
Yes, I did see the subject headline for the HBD program, but I never watched any of the videos.
Great. Good. See, that tells me people who have these issues discern not to look at those because they're not what you're looking for. However, there is one video where I go through, it's a 30-minute video. I will send you a link to it. Again, don't worry about the HCG stuff for now. I don't think, even if you wanted to do it, I wouldn't recommend it at this point. Okay? I do believe it is a physical therapy for people who are morbidly obese once they have fully and completely recovered. And it is optional, okay? And I think there needs to be more science and study. To me, I have observed and done tons of the scientist in me, okay, the physiologist in me is amazed by it. It blows my mind. To this day, I continue to work with people on it, and it continues to blow my mind. However, I do not think that when it is appropriate for most people. I think, in my opinion, I believe it should be reserved for eating disorder clinics, for people who are specifically focusing on these issues, and that a doctor who prescribes it, it would be like prescribing gastric bypass to me.
Okay.
That's where I sit with it. Clearly, it doesn't have the science. So with that said, the video I'll attach it to the bottom of this, but I'll also send it to you. I'll text it to you. I describe why people who are morbidly obese or who have more fat cells on their body, why you experience very little hunger relative to people who are much thinner. Again, this is written in Weight Loss Apocalypse. The science of this.
Okay.
Now, because you're where you're at in this recovery process, I feel very comfortable talking to you about it. Do you think I would have been comfortable, or you could have been talking about this a couple months ago?
Oh, not at all.
No. It would have totally sucked you into that intense pressure. And
yes, I would have felt very overwhelmed.
Yeah. It would have been the worst thing for you. Just horrible. So again, I don't promote it except for I believe it's a potential therapy. It's a medical procedure for people when they have completely recovered. So you're in the process of that. So that the hunger scale to me is also, okay, so going back to addressing the whole HCG thing, I want to make sure that it's clear to you that you do not have to do it ever. Ever.
Okay.
You feel good about that?
Yeah.
Good. Good.
I mean, I don't know anything about it, but just hearing that I don't have to follow a regimen.
Never. Mm-mm.
Sounds nice.
Okay, yeah.
Because I did that for so long.
I know.
Like,
I understand that.
It's such a nice break.
Oh, it's not just a break, dearie. It's the way you're going to live forever.
Yeah.
How's that feel?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's fabulous.
Yeah. So take a client who I'm working with who is where you're at, and they're 400 pounds. Right? 500 pounds. Mm-hmm. What do you do? What do you do? You know, where they're set free, they're comfortable. They could live in this body forever. But the alternative is there is a medical procedure that might help relieve the body if damage is done. And if they can maintain that emotional separation from it, they're a good candidate. If they can't separate themselves from it, they're not a good candidate.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that's clear, that as people run into my YouTubes and they see all this, that they understand my perspective is that this is a big picture medical procedure for very specific people, right? I do not recommend it as a diet. I don't recommend it for the average person. I don't recommend it for people who have these emotional issues. In fact, it is there's a lot of danger to it. So make sure when you watch the video I'm going to give you that you understand that.
Okay.
Really soak in the information about the hunger scale. So one of the books I'm writing right now is an updated version of the Dr. Simeon's HCG protocol with the hunger scale. And then I have another book that I will be writing that does not include HCG. And that one will have the science of hunger in it for people that need this work that are terrible candidates for the HCG protocol. So right now, because you're working with me in this learning process, you're kind of thrown into, and a lot of people are thrown into the mix of all this stuff without context around it. Because I don't have the books written.
Okay.
So eating to hunger is huge, because what it does for people who've had eating disorders, it allows you to, one, relax and not have to be so insane and work toward, because you have to eat. The body has to eat, and you need to relate to food emotionally because you're a human, right? But the goal is that it's not dysfunctional relating to food or codependent emotionally, right? So when you learn to eat to hunger, it gives you a sense of boundaries with food, and it eases the tension that you have with food emotionally, because you can rely on it to do the work for you. So you could look at your decades of eating disorder, and you could say, I was the sole proprietor of, and the sole owner and manager of eating, and it sucked. Because
it made food the enemy.
Totally. And you the enemy, because you sucked at it, right? Because, and then the diet industry says, well, we're going to do it for you. You have to do what we say. But yet what they're saying feels so destructive, and it can feel demoralizing when you can't do it. And then it's so personal, and all those emotions flare up, right? So the hunger scale kind of says that's none of your business. You can choose what you want and what sounds good to you, which is actually being regulated by my brain. And so the brain is actually regulating what sounds good to you. If you're emotionally unattached. But it's regulated by these rhythms. It's kind of like saying, do you tell your body when it should pee and how much it should pee when you need to urinate?
No.
It does it for you. You listen to it. You go, I gotta go to the bathroom. I'm not just going to stop peeing in the middle of urinating and then hold it for I'm going to release my bladder as my body gives me the sensation to do it. So it's a similar following of that rhythm. So it keeps you from being the manager. Isn't that the best?
Yeah. Because it takes the thought and the obsession and the reliance on food to make you feel better emotionally out of it.
Totally. And the other thing is, before, you were regulated by all these external measures, like what time is it? How much food is on the plate? You have to eat the whole plate. So there was no physical regulation of food intake, even though when we look at the science of hunger and the science of blood sugar and insulin and all of these things that affect your need for food, It's all regulated by hunger. So when people tell you you should, eat on a schedule, they're completely omitting and making irrelevant all of this incredible science we have available to us today that discusses our perception of hunger. Well, perception of it is different. Our actual physical sense of it, which is huge. I mean, so some of the science too about hunger, you'll find they say, well, people who are obese have leptin resistance. Oh my God. So I might be going over your head, but this is the conversation you're ready for now in this work together. So, so I think after you watch that video, you're going to have a lot more questions for me with this. But when people you produce way more leptin, because each cell of fat that you have is an organ in and of itself, and each cell produces hormones. So when you have, let's just say 50 pounds of fat, you're producing 50 pounds exponentially higher hormonal levels, right? Just because you have more fat producing more hormones. So, and as your fat cells get larger, and that's what they found in visceral fat, you're producing exponentially higher amounts of hormones because of the size of the cell and the function of that cell. So, I am so in my teaching mode right now. So if I go too fast or if I'm confusing you, please let me know. Okay. So what they thought, because this drives me nuts in the science, because they're thinking because you're morbidly obese that you're constantly eating. And that's not the case. If you look at, you might have obviously frequently binge ate, but in general, before, you didn't eat that much. If you really look at it, did you ever think, I don't really eat that much. Why am I so much overweight? I must have to starve. I need to really restrict. So that perception of how much food you need, they say because you produce so much leptin that your brain isn't getting the signal and you're hungry all the time. That's why you're so overweight, is because you're actually hungry all the time.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No. You're not hungry all the time.
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
You wanted food all the time. There's a difference, right?
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I was hungry to feed something, but it wasn't the physical hunger.
Correct.
The mental.
Yeah. So what you noticed this last 2 weeks in monitoring your actual physical sense of hunger is you weren't very hungry. And then as you re-regulated it, it kind of should be balanced out. And are you surprised if you look at the average amount of food that you eat? Are you surprised at how little you need? Or are you really surprised at how much you need?
I was surprised at how little, especially on days where, and it wasn't anything on purpose, but on days where I was eating like less carbs, carby food, those are the days that I noticed I was less hungry. But I just ate whatever I felt like.
Yeah, well, the thing is this, when you're more hungry, you're more prone to eat more carby food. So you really look at that. I want to ask that question and see if you can think back to observe that. Was it that you were less hungry, so therefore you didn't eat the carbs? That's what I find. That's what I found for me. When I'm not hungry, I just don't. It doesn't sound appealing to me, but when I'm like, say, premenstrual, I'm eating a lot more carbs. I'm a lot more hungry, and the carbs are what it takes to really get that hunger to go away.
That's true. That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, this is what we've got to get you to observe too, is to understand it without all the brainwashing, because there's a lot of brainwashing out there. That would say, well, you eat more carbs and then your cravings go up and then you eat more and you can't stop because it's like an addiction.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that so much.
Yeah, so how much of that is that affecting your how you're observing this? Just because that's what you were told, So we have to really look at this. Are you really hungrier after you eat carbs, or does hunger exist and your carbs are necessary to get rid of it? Because what you'll find when you do eat carbs is hunger goes away a lot faster.
Okay.
As long as you're not judging them. If you judge them and you emotionalize them, then you're going to overconsume it.
Oh, certainly. Especially with carbs.
Totally. Yeah.
The brainwashing. Mm-hmm.
Well, the shaming of it. Like, it's dangerous.
Right.
The moment
eat a piece of bread, how dare you?
Yeah, well, and it's dangerous, so you need to be regulated. If you're eating something dangerous, you can't rely on your hunger. Hunger is too conservative. You need something more. It's too liberal. You need something more conservative if you're under danger and if you're in fear. Being conservative is what fear-based thinking needs. Right? People who aren't in fear are more liberal in their thinking. Makes sense? So when it comes to hunger, again, when it comes to dieting and that brainwashing, if that food is dangerous, you can't rely on your hunger. You need control. You can only have a few bites of that because you can't handle it. So you tend to, when you do that, you're more likely to eat more, as you know from years and years of doing that. Yeah. So as we get rid of all that emotional bullshit and the brainwashing, and we just open your mind to what hunger is, and you allow yourself to eat these foods, you're going to find out that everything they've told you is the opposite is true. Because your whole entire wiring is kind of opposite now, don't you agree?
Completely.
Yeah, you could say what they say is true when you're in survival mode and shame, but it's not even... Again, are you really hungry, or did you, previously before recovery, were you just constantly feeding your sense of deprivation and suckiness and failure?
The latter.
Yeah, for sure. This is really exciting, don't you think? Because we're kind of moving forward. We're like, now we're working. Now we're getting into let's get some recovery work done, right? Isn't this exciting?
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
And I had a doctor's appointment the day after we talked last. And she says that I didn't ask about my weight. And I saw the number on the scale because I was standing. It was in front of me. Mm-hmm. But I didn't pay attention to it. She said she noticed I didn't gain or lose any weight over the holidays. And I told her I didn't notice because it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, because you don't care anymore.
Mm-hmm. And she said that she noticed it because most of her patients gain at least 10 pounds over the holidays.
Well, of course, it's totally understandable, especially if they've committed to dieting. I would too.
Mm-hmm. So I think she expected me to jump for joy or whatever, but
well, with that type of bias, yes. When you look at the bias of thin supremacy that's kind of pervasively taken over our culture, of course, being thinner is always better, and you should be so proud of yourself. Whatever you're doing is working. Yeah. So, beauty of it is if you don't care and you're totally detached from it.
Yes. And my blood pressure is amazing.
Can you feel that symptom? Do you feel better in terms of that? Do you notice a difference?
The blood pressure, no, I don't feel any different from that.
Yeah.
I feel different from the process, but...
Oh, totally. I love that you just said that. I totally get that. I have low blood pressure, and there are definitely symptoms, and I know that when people have high blood pressure, they can feel it too. And so what you might be just feeling is nothing, which is good.
Right. And so part of the whole mania of deprivation and dieting, part of that I was feeling could have been the high blood pressure. And now that part is over, and the blood pressure is lower, I don't know if I was feeling the blood pressure before. I could have been, but I don't know, because I wasn't paying attention to that at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was paying attention to when can I eat again.
Yeah. Tell me this, that attention of when can I eat again, are you still paying attention to that?
No.
How much attention are you paying to food and eating at this point?
At this point, compared to before, very little. I just make sure now that I have something on hand.
Yeah, so that when you get hungry, you don't have to think about it.
Right, and especially for work.
Yeah.
If I'm out in the field, I don't want to be stuck somewhere and not have at least something to snack on if I need to.
Okay, so let me compare. I will tell you what happened to me in recovery. So before recovery, I was thinking about food and my weight and my binges and how to fix it and all of that shit about 95% of the day. 95% of my free thinking. I had to go to classes. I was in college and whatnot. But 95% of everything was hijacked. My whole brain was fixated on it, and it was intense, right?
Uh-huh.
You were probably the same, okay? Even though our eating disorders were on the different sides of the spectrum, mine was more anorexic, yours was more binge eating. It was the same thing. Same 95% fixation.
Yeah.
After recovery, I would say my thoughts around food are roughly 10%. And it's very minimal. It's when I'm hungry. It's when I'm thinking like I'm a human, so I'm normal. I have normal mammal psychological needs around do I have food? Do I need to go grocery shopping? What sounds good? Do I have enough? Do I need more for my kids? Right? But I don't think about it really until it's relevant for those things. When I'm hungry, I think about what sounds good. And so I focus on that feel of in the mouth. What sounds good? If I have it, I'm excited. I get excited. I get excited if I've got like leftover taco stuff. That's exciting, right? Because it's all there and I can have tacos. If I don't have it, I have to think of something to fix. If I'm going down the hill, I have to okay, I'm getting hungry. When am I going to get home? Can I get home? If I can't get home, where am I going to go? So there's very minimal. And then when I get there, what sounds good? And then I enjoy it as I'm eating. And when hunger goes away, I stop, I put it away. I can eat it later if I want it. I get excited for those leftovers. At least I do. Some people don't. I do. But then my thoughts about it go to zero. I have no thoughts about it. Nothing. It's irrelevant to me at that point. It's only relevant when I have to prepare for my family, when I have to go grocery shopping, or when I'm in the presence of eating, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's about 10%, I think, for me, of my day.
That's very little.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat normal. It probably, depending on if I have to go grocery shopping, it goes up and down, but it's very minimal, I think. I mean, how often in the day do I think about going to the bathroom and pooping and going to the bathroom, right?
Only when you need to.
Yeah, like 5%.
Probably.
Yeah.
Right.
Those are important survival needs. So they're relevant, and they're relevant daily. I think about sleep, depending on how well I slept the night before. But those are things that are relevant in my daily thoughts, but very minimal. That's like 2%. If I wasn't sleeping well, it would probably be significantly higher.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Because those are really necessary to your physiology. So those physiological needs are important. But if you feel comfortable and safe, do you have to keep your eye on it? No. Right?
Uh-huh.
So again, the hunger scale to me allowed me to not keep my eye on it. I don't have to worry about it. My body will tell me, and it's going to give me a great message of, you're hungry, and I get excited when I'm hungry.
Yeah, I did have one of those moments this past week. I had a craving for a local fast food burger place And
Yummy.
so my husband says, well, why don't we just make it at home? So I was like, that's a great idea. Because I've been trying to, like, if I really want something, just make it at home myself. And so I ended up making really, really great burgers. I think it was Friday or Saturday night. And then actually had leftovers, which is rare. In the past, I would just eat it all. And then I had leftovers on Monday. So, which was, 2 days. So it was really good.
Yeah, and don't you get excited when see, I have leftovers. It makes it so that you don't have to think when you're ready to eat. It's like, food's available. Very little prep. It's all already prepped. Yeah. So when you were having your hamburgers, the thing is, did you allow yourself to really eat it and enjoy it the way you would have, like with a bun and with the mayonnaise, and you really put it so that it tastes good to you?
Oh, it was delicious.
Awesome.
It had all the things on it I would not, like before I would not have had it with a bun or with ketchup, because those are sugars.
I know.
And so, I had it with everything.
Oh my God, that's so awesome, because it's realistic. Don't you agree? This is realistic. If I'm going to eat a burger for the rest of my life, I'm going to eat what I enjoy. So
and I was hungry for it, and I ate it, and there was no attachment of, what am I doing? Why am I eating this?
Because you're hungry.
I'm going to regret this.
So my question for you is, as you're eating, are you getting full or uncomfortable?
I did not eat to get uncomfortable at all.
So you've been stopping before that occurs?
Correct.
So that's got to feel good too. I mean, when you leave a meal feeling sated is that feeling of, my hunger is gone. Like, I am relieved. It's a sense of relief, right? But
it is.
Yeah, and you don't have that uncomfortable burping and fullness and pressure. It's like a win-win situation where not only did I enjoy what I actually like and what I want to eat, but I'm not uncomfortable.
Correct. It's just, I know that I ate. It feels like I ate, but I don't feel. If I'm eating and I end up too full, then I would start to think, now I have to. What do I have to do to fix this? But I know that there will be times, right, when I am going to eat too much, and I'll be full, and I'll be like, okay, maybe next time I'll eat a little less.
Yeah.
So that I don't feel uncomfortable, not just because too many calories and then I have to diet it down.
Yeah, you don't have to fix it.
I can't say that I don't eat and never feel full. That would be wrong either. But I'm not feeding an empty emotional hole, and I'm trying to stuff.
You're being realistic with yourself, that there's times you're not paying attention, there's times you ate too fast, and that they will happen. However, when they do happen, it's not going to be like it was before. Before, you would have to fix it. Now, you don't. You can just rely on your hunger rhythms to fix it. What you're going to find amazing, too, is if you do have a moment where you have gone a little overboard, first of all, it's nowhere close to what you used to. So you're still not as incredibly in pain as you've been in the past. And you'll notice that you're not hungry for a long time after that. That the body manages it itself. It doesn't need your help to manage it. Obviously, it's positively reinforcing when you're not uncomfortable when you eat. It's so beneficial, right? It's like, why would you overeat intentionally? It's beneficial to be able to eat when you're hungry, to have that pleasure, the dopamine, and all of the joy and connection you get from enjoying it with family and friends, and for And to get that and to not be physically in pain is huge. It's super beneficial to really listen to the body's response and to stop when its response is discomfort. So beneficial. So yeah, there will be times you're going to overdo it. And the key is just saying, oh, well, I'm just going to wait till I'm hungry. And when I'm hungry, I'll eat again. But I'm just going to really pay attention next time. It's really just a matter of paying attention. So much easier.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. So here is where I have seen a lot of people relapse. Right around this space, right here. Why do you think?
Because they end up thinking about it too much, trying to control it.
No, that I do see that as a consequence of the relapse.
Okay.
It's because they get excited that because they're eating this way, that they might lose weight.
Oh, I see.
Which, in order for that to happen, they still have to be holding the fantasy of thinnerness, right? So you could say, we could argue, well, they're not recovered anyways. So the relapse isn't a real relapse. It's just manifesting the truth of their actual dysfunction. But to think of it easily, their hope to be thinner creeps in. And then what happens is that promotes what you just described, which is they become perfectionistic around, am I hungry? Oh my God, I'm not hungry. Oh my God, I ate too much. And then they feel bad about eating too much, or they can't tell the difference. That anxiety comes back into it. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah, so obviously if the thinnerness fantasy, you don't believe it anymore, you won't attach to what's going on with your body. You won't care. You'll be like, I just don't even give a shit. Even if I am thinner, like let's just say the next time you go to the doctor, you're 15 pounds less or 20 pounds less. And you've been ignoring it, but you can tell your clothes are different, whatever. If you don't care, if you're indifferent about it, even if you notice, if you're willing to regain weight to keep this freedom, it won't matter. If you're willing to regain weight, what does it matter if you lose weight? And obviously the willingness to regain weight comes because you want to keep this freedom, right? Freedom from worrying about it, managing it, having to control it, to maintain it. If that's none of your business anymore, right? If you want to keep this freedom, if your body starts to lose weight, can you afford to get excited about it?
No.
It
doesn't matter.
Well, what happens if you get excited to it? What happens to that freedom that you got to not worry about it if you get excited about it?
Well, if you get excited, then your goal becomes to keep losing weight.
Yeah, so what happens to your freedom? What happens to your freedom the moment you get excited about being thinner?
You lose it.
Yeah.
You get your old perspective back.
Yep. You go back.
Yay, I'm losing weight. Mm-hmm.
Yep, and now I get to monitor it. Now I'm really curious about it, and then what happens is you start to manage your food again.
Exactly.
And then the pressure too, because if you've lost weight, you got to keep it off. Oh my God, the pressure. And then what happens to your food consumption immediately?
Well, at that point you start deprivation and dieting.
In your mind, but what happens then to your food intake?
You'll binge.
It goes up. Food intake goes up. Because anxiety around being deprived goes up. I shouldn't be eating this anymore. You've lived that over and over and over again. So, as you're going through this, enjoy this freedom. It's amazing. Get used to it and really solidify in your mind. Are you willing to ignore what happens permanently, whether you lose, regain, lose again, gain more, lose? Are you willing to ignore all of that so that you can keep this freedom?
I am.
Yeah. Are you willing to not be excited? Are you willing to not have excitement about it? A lot of people get pleasure out of the excitement of that. Are you willing to not be pleased and get pleasure out of thinnerness so that you can just keep on ignoring it? That's an important question to ask. Don't you agree?
I agree, because for so long the focus was the number on the scale. For so long, that was the focus. So just like the beginning of our process, this will also might take some time to get used to.
Mm-hmm. And as you get used to it and really benefit from this freedom, go back in your mind and ask if you're willing to give it up to be thinner. For the excitement of being thinner, for the pleasure of the idea of the fantasy. Just imagine the fantasy does exist. Are you willing to give this freedom up to chase that fantasy again?
Absolutely not.
Hell no, that's my answer too. Some people it's yes, and they're, they'll go through another cycle.
There was so much darkness tied to that.
Mm-hmm.
That I would never want to go back to that.
Right, I know. And imagine, and keep this in mind. You're at the weight you are, and what you feel is lightness.
I do. I feel like I've lost 100 pounds.
Yeah, how much do you weigh right now?
Okay, let me see. I have my paperwork from the doctor's office last 2 weeks ago. It says 254.
And how tall are you?
5'2".
And you're 5'2". So so you're 254 pounds at 5'2", and how good do you feel right now?
I feel great.
Yeah. Oh, I love this process. I am amazed. I am amazed. You are amazing. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Robin. And I know that I could not have done it without you.
I'm just...
And your guidance and all the perspective that you've given me. And you know how to cut through the bullshit.
Yes, and you were ready for it. But it is just...
Oh, sure.
God is good. I don't know how else to say it. I know I don't necessarily believe in the religious man, God dominating over me, but whatever this is so beautiful, and it's grace, forgiveness, it is love, it's amazing to me, and I'm just watching it. I'm watching you go through it, and it's like I relive my own recovery. It blows my mind that something so dark and so diminishing, that this is right here, that this is possible. And it's not just removing the darkness, you are living in expansiveness, right? You get that feeling?
Yeah, it's like when you're trying to wake up from a nightmare, and you open your eyes and you realize that it's daylight, it's not nighttime anymore. Mm-hmm. There's a huge difference when you have a nightmare at night, or you have one in the morning when it's sunny. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel like I've woken up and it's sunny out, and there's no more having to think about
how to get rid of it.
What I've been through, exactly.
How to get rid of it. That's totally how I was living in a nightmare during the day, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, that is how it feels.
Yeah, That's exactly how it feels.
Mm-hmm. Like you're always being chased and your legs aren't working. Someone's suffocating you and you can't breathe and you can't get out. So you're going to be thrown from the cliff. You're going to be burned at the stake. And you're constantly trying to run away from it every day, day in, day out. Yeah. And again, it's not just relief from that. It is above and beyond that. What we're living in, what I'm living in now, what you're living in now. It is hard to describe the essence of existing. And the fact that you went from the place you were, and I went from the place I was, to this illumination, this lovingness, this expansiveness, to me is a miracle. It is a miracle.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, because when you're in it, even though you know that some type of recovery is possible, but you have no clue how to get there. You think that the only way to get there is to lose weight and to sit on somebody's couch and relive your childhood trauma. And you know what you want is you want the freedom from where you are, but you never know how it's going to feel when you get there. Like, this is what I wanted, but I never knew that it would feel this good, that it would, that this is how it would be, even though this is what I was craving and searching for. Yep. In my mind, it was being thinner, of course.
Yeah, well, and that's the only way to get it. That's the only access to it. And it gets further and further away the fatter you get, doesn't it?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
And so all we did was say, we're not going to, you're never going to get it that way. And you had to, what it feels like is permanently being severed from that freedom. That's the direction it took you, is to permanent detachment from that freedom. Because when you take away the thinness, your brain perceives that as death, permanent death. And you, at some point, whether it was on the phone with me or on your own, went through it. It's like dying. And you go into this state of permanent relief or permanent separation from that freedom. But you're blindly willing to do it, and it is blind, in hopes for something better. You don't know what it is, but you're willing to let go of what you thought you'd get in thinness forever for something else. It's like gambling without any concept of what you're gambling for. You just know you're losing this freedom you've been chasing, and it is permanent. The only reason I think you're here at this point, and I'm not in it, so I can't go inside your consciousness and go, oh yeah, she's done. So, but the way people get the permanence in this recovery, which is what I'm sensing you have, is because they permanently would rather not get that fantasy. They are permanently saying, I don't want freedom if it requires thinness. So I am rejecting the benefits of thinness forever for what I don't even know exists yet. So I'm basically going into nothing. And you did that.
Exactly. It's like you're surrendering to something you don't know you're surrendering to yet.
Until you get there, and then it's like, yeah. And the other thing is, there's no controls around it. There is no goals. There's nothing actually. You're just existing. So what we're trying to do right now is put to words what this feels like, right? This is very difficult to do. It's very difficult to express what this feels like. The only work that I found that comes close is the work of Dr. David R. Hawkins when he talks about the higher scales of consciousness. He clearly has been through this too. You can tell.
Okay. Yeah, I had a friend who had a baby 4 days ago through natural childbirth, her first child. And I talked to her yesterday, and she was trying to describe to me what it was like. And she said she'll never do that again. And she was trying to describe it. She says, I can't even describe how painful it was.
Yeah.
She said, you'll never know unless you went through it, Kim. She said.
That's true. That's true. However, her perception of that pain might have made it worse. I've had 3 babies. I admit I've had epidurals with all 3, but you go through labor and delivery before you get the epidural, and often you turn it down and you can feel it. And I would have to say that the pain I experienced was far worse when I was afraid of it and criticizing it. As soon as I went into acceptance, it changed everything. In fact, I don't think I needed anything for my 3rd. I had back labor with my first 2 with Susie. I had no back labor. It was like night and day. It was so much easier. But that experience was, to me, and everybody's so different, it was amazing. I would absolutely do it again. In fact, if I had a 4th, I would attempt to do it without medication if given the opportunity, if blessed with that best case scenario. So, but yeah, I mean, it is very difficult to explain this, to describe it, because it's especially that where you don't have a concept of it that we're trying to achieve.
That's true. I don't have any children, so I've never, and I have never been out of the binge diet cycle.
Right, you don't know what it's like outside of that.
Exactly, and so for me to try to, if I were to try to describe this or explain this to someone, it might even be difficult to do.
I'm having a hard time, and I've been trying to.
Tell them how I feel.
I've been working with people now for this type of work for 4 or 5 years. Before that it was different. I've evolved so much, but yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, the one thing I do is I say, you're not, to people who are in the midst of that dark eating disorder, it seems unimaginable that they wouldn't care about their food, that their weight would be irrelevant, that they wouldn't think about it all day, that they wouldn't care what people think about it. To hear that to them is like, that would be amazing. That's like winning the lottery. I can't even imagine what that would be like anymore. But that's what it's like. It's like, no, I don't care about my weight. I don't care about the food I'm eating. I literally don't have any thoughts about it after I'm done eating. I don't care. I don't feel shame. I don't feel pride when I eat food. I have no attachment to the food I'm eating whatsoever, or the outcome of my body has, unless I'm uncomfortable, right? If there's pain, I definitely understand that. But that type of freedom to someone who is in a dysfunctional, abusive relationship with body image and dieting is like, they can only imagine. They get a sense of what that freedom would be like because they can sense that it would be amazing. They get that sense of amazingness, but they can't imagine it naturally occurring.
Right, without the scale being involved.
Yeah, or controls, or the wanting of it, right? There's this, it's like it's natural. It happens natural when you go out the bottom. You and I went out the bottom. I call that like you're going down through hell. You're not trying to get out of hell from above. You just go out the bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
Release it.
Yeah, you're hitting it. And yeah. Anyways. So now that you're here, you have the grace of eating to hunger and learning what hunger feels like, and actually relearning how to live in your body with food as if you're a child. It's so fun. How does it feel to not have any morality around food, where there's no bad food, there's no good food. It's all food.
Oh, it's wonderful because you don't. It's not categorized.
Yeah, there's no shame or guilt,
There's,
badness,
right.
goodness, pressure.
There's a lot more available to you.
Yeah.
Rather than just having a very narrow way of thinking about what you can eat and a certain list of foods and what you can eat.
Yeah, wouldn't you agree? It's really relaxed. You use the word narrowness. I love that. That's how it used to be. It used to be very narrow and pressurized.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like broad and repetitive, and you can get more, and there's enough, and there's no pressure, and you haven't done anything wrong. So you just can relax into actually tasting the food. It's so easy, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier than I expected.
Well, I know. Your expectations were based on, how hard it was. I know my expectations for recovery when I was in it was this is going to be so hard because what I'm doing is so, so difficult. So it must require an equally difficult unraveling. Not when you let go of the ego and your survival. It is like, whoosh, it's gone. It's like requires nothing. So,